Hey everybody, it is You Had to Ask, the show where I answer your questions, and hey, check it out. Bonus kitty! Oh, hi Addie. Don't get used to it. Anyway, my first question this week comes from Piker Eyes, who says, Hey Steve, ever since I came out as an atheist, I've felt at times that family members are hesitant to include me in family functions at times. It has only ever been on my wife's side of the family, but it is never discussed or mentioned. Have you ever felt or experienced similar? I think I've mentioned once or twice before in videos that my own family doesn't really care that I'm an atheist. It's never ever come up in a conversation, and certainly not in a negative context. I do have an aunt, a great aunt, who apparently has a problem with it, or at least is uncomfortable with it. But she's never said that to me. She said that to other people that I have then heard about. And on my wife's side of the family, they are a very religious bunch. They're very Christian. They're all churchgoers, or most of them are churchgoers and very devout. And I think maybe there might be a little tension there with certain members, not with my wife's immediate family, like my in-laws, my father-in-law and my mother-in-law and my sister-in-law. That we have always gotten along great. I mean, they're just like family to me, and it's never been a problem with them. But with the more extended family, I get the impression maybe there's like some concern or some resentment. But again, nothing has ever been said to me personally. It's always been stuff I've heard about secondhand. Conversations that have taken place or questions that have been asked when I wasn't around. And with that stuff, I just don't care about it. I just completely ignore it. I figure if it's not important enough to talk to me about it, then fuck it. The Lizard Lass. Hi Steve, I just watched your video, The Relatable Adventures of Superman, and it reminded me of Superman's song by the Crash Test Dummies. Are you familiar with that song? If not, you should check it out. I'm not a fan of comic books. My brain doesn't like following the format. But I do like superhero movies. I've never been that into Superman, though, with the exception that that song makes him conceptually one of my favorites. In my opinion, that song captures what you see in Superman better than any of the movies or cartoons, or even the one or two comics I've seen. Thoughts? I think you raised a really interesting point. I like that Crash Test Dummies song. My favorite Superman song, I have to admit, and this is maybe a bit of a guilty pleasure, but my favorite Superman song is Superman It's Not Easy by Five for Fighting, which I know is like the corniest fucking song ever. It is so sentimental and shamelessly corny, but I really, as a Superman fan, that song gets me right here. It gets me right the fuck here. I just love that song. And I think I feel about that song the way you feel about the Crash Test Dummy song. There's something about it that gets to a core part of the Superman concept that I find very attractive. It touches sort of the heart of that character. Why is he so compelling to me? Why do I have such affection for him as a character? It's because of things that song hints at, like his weariness and his loneliness, and the fact that everybody looks at him as a cape, as someone who is indestructible. And look, he can fly, and he's so fast, and he's so strong, and yet inside he's a normal person. And he has the same emotions and the same, mental and emotional limitations that normal people do. And yeah, I do think that songs, I think because songs are very short and songs are very pure, songs have to be very direct. Songs, in a sense, are like short stories or poems. They can't fuck around. They can't spend a whole lot of time on narrative and character development. They have to really just get to the point. What is this about? So they can bring out the essence of a character, or bring out the essence of what makes a concept compelling, much better sometimes than a full-length movie or a book or a comic can do. It's just part of the nature of the format. It's a very intense, direct format. And I agree with you. I do think that those songs get at the core of the Superman character that I find attractive better than a lot of other movies, a lot of other forms of Superman stories. Patrick Dodds. Steve, I really enjoyed your video about Superman yesterday, but it got me thinking about the fact that if I were to do the same impassioned think piece about Star Trek, which also gets marginalized for having so-called goody-goody characters, I'd get a life, nerd, it's just a stupid TV show. Why is it people can wax serious about Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, Doctor Who, or any superhero comic and not be leveled the same hurtful scorn? They all have their crazed, obnoxious fans, so why is Trek singled out? I don't know if Trek is singled out. I think maybe because Star Trek itself is so well known, and Star Trek fans are sort of the prototypical sci-fi nerds in terms of popular culture. I think maybe it gets a little bit of extra scorn for that. When you think of like a hardcore sci-fi nerd, you probably are thinking of like some dude at a Star Trek convention dressed up like Spock. So I think that might be a factor, but I don't think that Star Trek fans are singled out. I think if you look, there's plenty of scorn to go around for, Star Wars fans and Lord of the Rings fans. I think that happens with a lot of sort of geek groups, fan communities. I think all of them can sort of catch guff from people outside of the fan community. Creighton Reed, hey Steve, what are your thoughts on the Hulk Hogan termination from WWE due to racial remarks? If you'd like to hear me comment more extensively on the Hogan situation, I invite you to watch the most recent episode of my wrestling show, Wrestling with Wrestling. You can find it on my YouTube channel. It's the most recent episode. It's episode number 70, and for about the first 30 minutes or so, you can hear me and my co-host, Dot Gregory, give our opinions at length on the Hogan situation and the much broader context in which it happens. But briefly, my response is fuck Hulk Hogan. I have no sympathy for him. I have no interest in taking up for him. I have no interest in trying to mitigate what he said by saying, oh, it was in private, or oh, maybe that's not how he really feels, or we've all said things like that. I am not a fan of Hulk Hogan. I was when I was 9 years old, but I'm not anymore. I'm not a fan of him as a performer or as a human being. I don't think he's a very good ambassador for WWE or pro wrestling in general. I just think he's not a good person. And I am actually enjoying a bit of schadenfreude at seeing his fall from grace. I think what he said was reprehensible. I think the ideas and the attitudes that he expresses were reprehensible and were a really startling, undeniable example of the kind of casual racism and white privilege that is still a massive problem in this country. And anyone who has been a fan of pro wrestling and has noticed how fucking racist it is, as an industry, as a genre, would not have been terribly surprised to hear that Hulk Hogan is a big fat racist. Jason with a D. Hey Steve, I have a question. So let's say that you are out walking a porcupine, as one would do on a fine summer day, and you come across a small gathering of Girl Scouts who have become upset because a local hooligan has stolen their troop mascot. The mascot in question is something they call Darla John, and it is a small statue that they've made from several toilet paper rolls that they spray painted silver. Naturally, you and your porcupine friend agree to track down the thief and bring him or her to justice Hagerstown style. But as you are about to climb into your black 66 Camaro with custom rims and Audi painted on the hood, you are distracted by what appears to be a blimp flying through the air. You notice that it is being attacked by flaming crows. Quite the problem. You have distraught Girl Scouts on one hand, who have become increasingly feral the longer their mascot is missing, and on the other, you have the blimp. The question is, and it is in some ways the ultimate question that we all must ask of ourselves at some time in our brief lives, not what should one do when confronted with a choice between Girl Scouts and blimps, though that question does come up eventually, hint, the answer is blimps. And it's not the question as to why one would ever agree to a long-term contract to walk a porcupine on a daily basis. Yes, the porcupine needs exercise, but it probably has rabies. Did I mention that, the rabies part? In case I didn't, the porcupine has rabies and syphilis. Porcupines are wanton creatures of lust and hydrophobia. Everyone knows that. I fully expect David Attenborough to shuffle off this mortal coil one day at the thrusting pelvis of a rabies-mad porcupine. And if you live right, so can you. Where was I? Oh yes, the question. The question that begs an answer. An answer from you, my sage friend. I mean sage as in wise. I don't mean to imply that you are like the herb used in cooking. You are not sage in that respect. I believe you to be more of a bay leaf when it comes to assigning herbs and spices based on personality traits. Back in the 1800s, it was all the rage. Abe Lincoln was turmeric. Old turmeric, people would call him. Abe believed that he was more like cinnamon, but everybody wants to be cinnamon. I guess because it's popular and can be used in a variety of dishes. Anywho, the question. So as you stand there, watching a blimp catch fire due to flaming crows, and a feral Girl Scouts begin to run down pedestrians and tear them limb from limb in the hopes that a blood sacrifice will bring their mascot back to them, what would you rather drink? Coke or Pepsi? Coke. William Wright. Hey Steve, it's widely thought in progressive circles that the major figures of the new atheist movement, Dawkins, Hitchens, Harris, Marr, etc., have a great deal of problematic elements. Racism, sexism, imperialist apologetics, etc. Despite the character of these individuals, would you recommend any of their works? Which works would you recommend from each individual? Book, TV show, movie, debate, etc. Do you have difficulty separating the art from the artist when it comes to deeply problematic individuals or movements? Thanks. Personally, I'm fairly good at compartmentalizing, so I can appreciate what I consider the good contributions of the people you mentioned, while also being mindful of the problems. I agree with you completely. They're all problematic. They have all exhibited, to varying degrees at various times, attitudes of sexism and racism and Islamophobia and Eurocentrism. I completely agree with you. I do think it's important to emphasize that you can find something problematic and still find value in it. I think that's a very important aspect of criticism, of having to deal with the reality that, look, everything is problematic to somebody. I have very serious problems with the Islamophobic attitudes and the sexist attitudes occasionally exhibited by particularly Dawkins and Harris and Marr. Hitchens was a sexist too, and Hitchens had a really disappointing attachment to the Iraq War. But he's no longer with us, so I'll sort of push him off to the side for now. But despite my misgivings about the sexism and the Islamophobia, etc., displayed by Dawkins and Harris and Marr, there are things that they have done that I have really enjoyed and think are worth checking out. With Dawkins, it's easy. His science writing. He's an amazing ambassador for science. He is one of the great popular science writers ever. He's the Carl Sagan of biology. If I recommended one book of his, it would probably be the book on the evidence for evolution that he wrote a few years ago called The Greatest Show on Earth. It's just wonderful. And his series, he did a series of lectures. He did the Royal Academy Christmas lectures in 1991, I think, that are available on YouTube under the title Growing Up in the Universe, that are just phenomenal. I cannot recommend them highly enough. Harris, I'm not as much of a fan of. I thought that Letter to a Christian Nation was pretty good and very short. Grey Ghost Volume 1. Steve! I hope I'm not asking this too late. I've been having an internal debate about whether or not I should start uploading videos. I already came up with a premise and how to go about implementing it, but I can't help think that YouTube is already saturated by secular, reason-based channels, which is what I would be focusing on. What do you think? Is there enough room in the YouTube landscape for someone new to wiggle their way in neatly? Has it gotten to the point that your channel needs to really stand out for it to have any chance of surviving? Is there a third, more nuanced outlook that I'm missing? I don't think it's a more nuanced outlook. I think it's just a different perspective. If you have a concept and it means something to you and you think it will be good and it's something that you don't see other people doing, even if it does fall into the broader category of sort of atheist, skeptical, reason-based videos that a lot of other people are doing, then don't worry about it. Just fucking do it. And it will survive as long as you are willing to do it. I mean, YouTube doesn't have a programmer. There's nobody telling you, oh, okay, you're canceled. You can't do that anymore. As long as you want to do it, you can do it. Even if everybody hates it. Even if you put up a video and everybody says, this is stupid, stop doing this. If you still want to do it, if it still means something to you, then you can keep doing it. And that's what you should do. If people don't like it, they don't have to watch it. There are so many options on YouTube, as you point out in your question. If people don't like what you're doing, they can watch something else. But it doesn't mean you have to stop doing it if you don't want to. So if you have a concept that you've put some thought into it, some work into, and you think that concept is workable, and you like it, and you want to do it, man, just fucking do it. do it. I encourage you to do it. And if it turns out not as good as you thought it was, oh well, you gave it a shot. But you should definitely do it. Carl C. Hi Steve, what do you think of the book film To Kill a Mockingbird? And if you were to watch it now, do you think your experience would be affected by knowledge of how Atticus's story develops in later years, as described in Ghost at a Watchman, assuming you've read it or have seen reviews with spoilers? I haven't looked at Mockingbird since the sequel was published, though I haven't read the new book either. I'm nervous about both. Thanks a lot. I really like both the book and the movie To Kill a Mockingbird, and I love the character of Atticus. I have not read Ghost at a Watchman. I might read it just out of curiosity. But I know about the character development that Atticus shows in that book. A lot of people are sort of dismayed by it. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't change my opinion of Atticus in To Kill a Mockingbird. This is one of the reasons why I'm not a huge fan of the concept of canon when it comes to fictional works. If you admire Atticus as he is in To Kill a Mockingbird, then continue to admire Atticus as he is in To Kill a Mockingbird. You don't have to be saddened by the knowledge that when he grows old, and spoiler alert for those of you who don't know what is depicted in Ghost at a Watchman, you don't have to be bothered by knowing that in his later years he becomes more racist when he was like a champion of civil rights in To Kill a Mockingbird. He's not a real person. If it bothers you to think of him growing old and becoming a racist, then just focus on Atticus and To Kill a Mockingbird. It's a complete work. But if you do want to reckon with it, I think there's a lesson to be learned there in realizing that your heroes are not always as pure as you think they are. My understanding of the story of Ghost at a Watchman, and again I haven't read it, is that Scout comes back home as an adult and finds that the father that she idolized as a child turned out to not be such a great guy. That's something that we all have to reckon with at some point, or at least most of us have to reckon with at some point. We grow up and when we realize, no matter how much we may have idolized our parents as children, that they are people, they are normal human beings, they are fallible, they have opinions that we don't always agree with, they say things that are sometimes absolutely mortifying to us. And we have to reconcile that person with the idol that we cherished as a child. And maybe people who are reacting poorly to that characterization of an older Atticus are people who have had trouble reconciling themselves with that experience in real life. But I think it's an important thing to do. I think it's necessary. I think it's part of growing up and coming of age, realizing that your parents are not perfect, that in fact, in some cases, your parents might even not be that great people from time to time. They might be people that you can't admire, at least in certain circumstances. And that's a difficult pill to swallow, but it's one that you have to swallow if you want to grow up. Me, personally, as far as growing up, I am content to continue to sit in front of a video camera and react to a sound of thunder that I don't really hear. I put it in later to signify that it is now time for
the lightning round. Rapid fire questions, glib and adequate answers.
Dear Wunderbar, have you ever just felt for opening up a window and shout, "Soylent Green is people!" at the top of your lungs? No, but I have occasionally been taken by the impulse to climb on top of the roof and scream, "I am a golden god!" I want to do that almost every day, but I don't. Most of the time. H. Jorcherland. I'm sorry for ruining that pronunciation. Horturland? I'm an English-speaking monoglot. I apologize. Your reaction to the People County officials who prevented a secular Muslim summer camp project because they were sure that he was creating an ISIS training camp. Oh, that's a future item in a 5 Stupid Things list, to be sure. It's bullshit. It's anti-Muslim paranoia. People don't seem to realize that in this country, Muslims are not a looming threat, but a despised minority. And they should be treated as such with respect and charity, not suspicion and denigration. Ira Moser, is Audie a rescue? Where did you get her? I guess you can say she's a rescue of a sort. She was a stray. So technically I got her right over there, off the street. Ahoyerno, question. You've commented on a few of my comments, so I'd like your honest opinion. What do you think of my English? I moved to Germany 3 years ago, and I feel my English has suffered a lot, so don't hold back. Give me a few pointers. I cannot understand a word that you just said. So if whatever you're asking, I apologize. I can't answer. Your English is fine. Your English sounds just fine. Drew White, are there any male advocacy groups or individual male activists that focus on positive masculinity without using sexist rhetoric? Yeah, there are a few. For some reason, most of them seem to be centered in the UK, not in the United States. But there's the Good Men Project. There's Calm, the campaign against living miserably, is pretty good. There's Survivors UK, which is a charity for male rape victims and male abuse victims. Those are all very excellent. Not part of the men's rights movement. Legitimate charity activist organizations. I have no problem with any of those groups. Mr. Frog Smoke, hey Steve, when you see a movie in a theater, do you take advantage of the concession stand or do you just bring in goodies of your own? Also, if you buy stuff at the theater, what do you like? My favorite has always been popcorn and Raisinets. I usually don't get anything, actually. I prefer to not drink or eat anything when I go to see a movie. I just sit there and watch the movie because I've either eaten before or I plan to eat after the movie. But if I do get something, yeah, I love popcorn, I love goobers, and I love nonpareils. Those are my favorites. Sabrina Luizides Meredith. Hey Steve, do you think it's okay for a non-Christian to sing hymns or religious music like Christmas carols? I was brought up Christian and I still love hearing some of the old hymns and even singing along if I hear them. Is it okay to sing along even if you don't believe? I think so. I love Christmas carols. I love religious songs, sacred hymns. I think some of them are beautiful. I love Oh Holy Night. You can't get much more Christian than that. I think it's a beautiful song. So no, I don't think there's any problem with that at all. Just because you don't believe in the reality that the song is referring to doesn't mean you can't enjoy the spirit of the music. I think there's no problem with that at all. Clarence Crawford, what's the first car you ever owned? Well, technically, it was the first car I ever drove that was like my car. It was a hand-me-down from my mom, and it was a 1991 Pontiac Grand Am. The first car that was ever mine, like that was only my car, that wasn't passed down to me from another relative, was a 1996 Ford Taurus. Fandon 2, hi Steve, you get to instruct the new He-Man movie. What characters do you want to include and who shall play them, and will it have gore and decapitations in it? I don't know, is it too on the nose to hope for Chris Hemsworth as He-Man? I know he's Thor, but I mean, that's what He-Man should look like, maybe with the Page Boy haircut. Cut Thor's hair, put a slightly different armor on him, and there's your fucking He-Man. Classic characters, He-Man, Skeletor, Man-at-Arms, Tila, King Randor, Beastman, Triclops, all of the Merman, Trapjaw, just the basic heroes and villains. The heroic warriors and the evil villains, or whatever the fuck they were called. No gore and decapitations. No, none of that in a He-Man movie. I would want it to be as much like the cartoon as possible. So it would be weird and goofy and fun, not horrible and violent. Sofia Luna Jimena Banderas. I was so close. I feel like I almost got to the end of that without fucking it up. Sofia Luna Jimena Banderas. Is that close enough, Sofia? I hope so. Lightning round, I'll ask one last time. What foods did you eat growing up with parents, grandparents for everyday meals, holidays, etc.? Since I come from a Latino family, I had a lot of pork, rice and beans, pastelillos, fried plantains, Three's leche cake, dulce de leche, to name a few. Thank you so much for your videos. I really love your channel. P.S. You should try dulce de leche. Either buy it or learn how to make it. Trust me, it tastes like heaven. Well, thank you. I might try that. And by the way, again, I apologize for my horrendous Spanish pronunciation. I ate a lot of what I guess we called in my family comfort food. Mashed potatoes and gravy, chicken, roast beef, peas and carrots, macaroni and cheese, scalloped potatoes, turkey, that sort of thing. Just really sort of aggressively ordinary American food for the most part. And my dad was a deer hunter, so we also ate a lot of venison during deer season. But that's basically what my diet was at family meals as a kid. Hey, that's the last question. Before I get out of here, I'm going to give somebody a shout out. The shout out this week is, I must admit, somewhat selfish, because I'm going to shout out the channel of a show that I'm going to be on this weekend. So the shout out this week goes to Mythicist Milwaukee. Not only is it a YouTube channel, it's also a live audio show that I'm going to be on this weekend. I will be the guest on Mythicist Milwaukee this Sunday, starting at 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central over there in Milwaukee. Mythicist Milwaukee, if you're not familiar with it, it's a skeptical atheist podcast. It has as part of its core mission to sort of examine religion from the perspective that many of the stories and figures at the foundations of religions are mythical figures, or quite probably mythical figures. It's a really interesting, wonderful show, and they have graciously invited me to be a guest and to talk about YouTube atheism and talk about all the stuff that I do here on this channel and atheist, secular related stuff. And it's going to be a lot of fun. I've really been looking forward to it for the last few weeks, ever since they booked me. So Mythicist Milwaukee. Not only do I want you to check out their YouTube channel where their shows are archived, you can listen to past shows, and where eventually you'll be able to listen to my show when it's up there. But if you want to listen to the show live on Sunday when I'm on the air, again starting at 3 p.m. Eastern, you go to their website, go to mythicistmilwaukee.com/listen-live. And that's when you can listen to the show live as it happens. So I encourage you all to either listen live or listen to the show later. I'm really looking forward to this appearance on Mythicist Milwaukee, and I highly recommend that you check out not only my appearance, but the whole show in general, because it's really a cool show. Check it out. Mythicist Milwaukee. Also, don't forget, since we're talking about podcasts, check out the Lemme Listen podcast by the great Jason Harding, who asked a question earlier. I am the co-host of one of them, Late Seating, the movie review podcast, co-hosted by none other than yours truly. Lots of other funny podcasts on there as well. American Monsters and How to Destroy Them, Let Me Finish. Highly recommended. Check it out, soundcloud.com/Lemme-listen. And that is it, everybody. I'm done at long last. I'm finally finished. The guy across the street is still unloading that fucking truck. But it's not my problem anymore because I'm done. Thank you for watching. Please leave a comment for next time. Ask me a question for the next video. Ask me anything about anything. Nothing is too serious. Nothing is too silly. Leave your question in the comments below. I will answer as many of them as I possibly can in the next video. So until next time, take care, everybody.